The second time Ajax Whitman found himself flat on his back after an unplanned trip through the air, he was almost a believer. Hey, I'm Jeff Shaw. I'm a professor at Western Washington University, and this winter I'm teaching a class called This Is Why We Fight, an interdisciplinary history of martial arts, 1600 to the present. Out of 15,000 cops on the New York City police force, Ajax Whitman was famous for being the strongest. His given name was Selig, but his traveling strongman name, Ajax, had stuck with him after he joined the force. His birth name was Selig, but you can see why most people called him Ajax the Strongman. Yeah, that's him lifting 1,030 pounds with his teeth. This is the story about how police in America started training jiu-jitsu from places like New York City, where Ajax was based, to Los Angeles, to Omaha, Nebraska. And although Ajax is a pivotal figure in this story, he's not the hero of it. You would think that the hero of the story would be Katsugame Higashi, who was the first jiu-jitsu star in America around the turn of the 20th century. He's the guy who threw Whitman twice, and you'll really think he's the hero of the story in about 30 seconds. It was 1904, and Higashi was doing a demonstration for New York City police officers in order to try to convince the force to start doing jiu-jitsu training. New York Police Commissioner William McAdoo had invited his 5 toughest officers to be at the demonstration and to spar with Katsugame Higashi. Whitman was supposed to be the strongest and toughest one, but those other guys were really tough too. John Flanagan was a world champion hammer thrower, 3-time Olympian. You had a competitive distance runner and 2 boxing champions that were also at the event. Every single one of these guys was bigger and stronger than the 120-pound Higashi. So Whitman comes at him first, gets thrown, doesn't believe he got thrown, stands up again, wants to go again, gets thrown even harder the second time. Higashi warned him not to resist too heavily or the throw would hurt him. Whitman didn't listen, gets thrown once, gets thrown twice. The second time, Higashi catches him in a choke so hard that Whitman's tongue protruded from his mouth and his face became purple. You really think Higashi is the hero of this story now, don't you? The very next day, the Waterbury Evening Democrat reported that not only did Ajax feel very sore, but that none denied the power of the jiu-jitsu, and the New York police would all start training jiu-jitsu after that. At this point in the video, it seems like this is all about early police training jiu-jitsu, which is half true, and it definitely seems like Higashi is the hero, which is 1/3 true. If you only read one article about this incident, I suggest this one from the Washburn Times, January 19, 1905. It takes you from the beginning of the incident to the end, to the time after Ajax Whitman gets thrown and choked, and Charles Kammerer, who was the national middleweight boxing champion at the time, is the only other police officer to challenge Higashi. He gets thrown anywhere from 1 to a dozen times, depending on the source, but this is the most satisfying description of the incident you'll find. This demonstration changed everything in 2 ways. First of all, media reports picked this up throughout the country, and Higashi right here quickly rocketed to prominence as the first jiu-jitsu star in America. Second, police departments started seeking training. This one obviously focuses on the New York Police Department, and if you read a second article about this incident, it should be this one from the Savannah Morning News on December 31st, 1904. I love this one because it has illustrations. Evidently, we were teaching cops to jump guard in 1904. It wasn't just New York. As the Los Angeles Herald reports, out in LA, Chief Billy Hamill called for a demonstration in January 1905 and soon thereafter implemented jiu-jitsu training for his officers, even though he thought guns were more important. Hamill also was the first LA police chief to mandate the use of automobiles. 2 months later, the same thing was happening in Omaha, Nebraska, where Chief Donahue started implementing jiu-jitsu training for his officers there. And this leads to one very large question we'll explore in a different video. What if all of these folks had kept training starting in 1905 and 1906 and just employed instructors to continue jiu-jitsu training in America? What would martial arts in America look like then? I certainly have thoughts on the matter, and I'll share them in detail in a later video, but before we get out of here today, there are 2 other things we have to do. First, I have to explain what I mean by jiu-jitsu training for the police only being half the story, and second, I have to pay off something that I promised I would in yesterday's video. While you're enjoying this excellent cartoon from the LA Herald in 1905 that explains how jiu-jitsu was used to put criminals away, I will explain that in the criminal justice system, the people are represented by 2 separate yet equally important groups: the police who investigate crime and the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. If Law & Order has taught me nothing else, it's taught me that. Yes, that means we're going back to the courtroom, and just before we do, I want to ask all you martial artists out there a rhetorical question that you can think about. Have you ever challenged somebody that they couldn't get a move on you and then had them get it, and then thought, well, that's got to be a fluke, and then challenged them again and then had them get it again? Yeah, I'll cop to that. Yesterday, I shared the story of Misao Saga, who was accosted on the street by a former professional boxer who tried to harass her. She threw him to the ground not once but twice and ended up prosecuting him. There are a lot of cool elements of this story. The fact that she threw this guy once, the fact that he was a professional boxer and she threw him anyway, the fact that he got up, said, "I haven't had enough," and she threw him again. It's also cool, of course, that this ended up in court at all and that we got this amazing image out of it. But how did we get this image? Misao Saga wasn't fluent in English, so when she was asked to explain what she did, she couldn't do it in the language of the judge. And so instead of explaining it, the judge said, well, hey, show what you did. But who suggested that? I promised yesterday I would tell you what I thought the coolest part of this courtroom story was, and we're at that point now. In order to fully explain this, I want you to go back to that thought experiment we did before, where you challenge someone, hey, I bet you can't get that move on me. They get it on you, then you challenge them again, and they get it again. What does this have to do with this story and the hero of this story? Well, when the interpreter told the magistrate that Miss Sota was unable to explain, someone suggested, suppose she shows the magistrate what she did. And the person who made that suggestion was the person who made the arrest. That's right, the person who made the arrest, police strongman Ajax Whitman. Less than 10 months prior, Whitman himself had been thrown twice in a demonstration. Now he was setting somebody else up to have the same thing happen to them in a courtroom. Given how young jiu-jitsu was in America, Ajax the strongman was almost certainly the only person who saw what was coming in the next few minutes. But nobody, not even Ajax, could have seen where jiu-jitsu would go in the next 120 years. We'll talk about that again soon.